Going to Solar Beach Colony?
Yes.
Is that a view or what?
Wow.
That's amazing.
Oh, you're gonna make a wonderful mother. I can see it in your eyes.
Because we want children so much.
Of course you do. A child completes it.
Cthulhu. Cthulhu.
How they're monsters. Creatures of the sea.
See the light?
What is it?
Open the door. Don't be afraid.
Listen, I've heard about some of these cults. They're into all this Necronomicon. Not gonna hurt you.
They'll hurt you.
We are the esoteric order of Dagon. See the glorious light within us all.
Welcome all. I'm very pleased to be joined here by the cast and creator of Deep Ones. This is a great little retro horror straight out of the Lovecraftian universe, which I really enjoyed, albeit I can't say too much just yet. So I'm going to start with you, Chad, given this is your baby very much, both from a writing perspective and a directing. What I'll say, though, Robert and Kelly, is if you want to chip in and add, especially if you're also fans of Lovecraft and cosmic horror, you know, let's have a good old chat about it all. So, I mean, personally, when I saw this on the Grimmfest list, I was really excited. I absolutely love cosmic horror. I'm a big Lovecraft fan, although can I pronounce any of the gods' names? No. And certainly, being a goth in the 90s, of course, we went to Lovecraft. But I've noticed, actually, there's a lot of cosmic films, a lot of Lovecraft. We've got the, you know, the Netflix series coming. We've had Color Out of Space this year. What do you think appeals to, I don't know, this generation of horror fans? What about the Lovecraftian universe appeals to people right now? Why are so many films coming out?
I think we're finally catching up to his psyche. You know, he was so ahead of his time that it's fine. You know, I can't say that it is discovered, because it's been discovered by everyone who's been making films and television shows since the beginning of film and television shows. I mean, I remember seeing, you know, episodes of Alfred Hitchcock Presents or the Twilight Zones that had certain Lovecraftian elements intertwined, especially when, at my age, rereading a lot of Lovecraft stuff before embarking on this project, I kind of saw it through a whole new set of eyes, because now that I'm older and can appreciate it more, it really sets in. And then I start thinking back, oh, that episode of, you know, Alfred Hitchcock Presents in 1955 had a Lovecraftian element to it. So the writers of that episode must have read this and this. So it's amazing how decade after decade after decade, his work still lives and it still inspires, and it's still, every generation can be introduced to it on a whole new level. And I think that's what's so exciting, is someone, whether they like this film or don't like it, they're intrigued by it enough to say, oh, I want to learn more about Lovecraft. I want to read his stories, and oh, that's great. Boy, they messed it up. Or boy, they really were true to what he was going for. And the vibe and the sense of dread is in there. And I think that, to me, is the most exciting part of taking someone else's writing that he so generously basically gave to everyone to use without, the copyright and all that kind of stuff, and died penniless, by the way. So it's amazing that someone who at the time, did all this amazing work, and it's lived on to this day, and it will continue to live on. And that, to me, is really amazing, and something that I think every artist aspires to have something that timeless.
Absolutely. Even his short stories, just inspire movie after movie. And when Color Out of Space was based on a short and Deep Ones, it's kind of part of the universe that, we'll talk about that storyline, but you've really brought to life. Do you think that, given what's going on in the world, and I'm not just mentioning COVID, but over the last few years, the millennials now are getting older. There's difficulties with the economy, and we're taking on more of a nihilistic view of life. Sure. Do you think that's part of the appeal or not?
I think that's a good way to look at it, and definitely that could share with the people kind of embracing this other world that's even darker than the world we're in right now. So, again, escapism, I think, is, the main thing. If the world is melting around you, you kind of want to escape into something that's worse, or more dreadful than what's right around the corner. So I think escapism in every sense of the word is what people are really looking forward right now, especially when they're all locked in the house and hiding under their beds. They want something that's, worse off than the position they're in at the moment.
So, Kelly, you were nodding quite vigorously there. Do you want to add to that?
I just think that's I've thought that before, that all the Lovecraft stuff that's coming out now, which I had no idea when we were making this movie that it was going to have this this immense high profile quality to it, like with the show on HBO and everything. Mm-hmm. I just think it's the times. In the past, when I've had something I had to fight as a character, there was a chance I was going to win, but this is just so. The monsters are just. You know what? I'm going to be careful because I think I'm going to blow. I'm going to.
We can mention Dagon because a Lovecraftian fan would know. In the Deep Ones, you've got the Deep Ones and you've got Dagon, and the Deep Ones are very much. There's the interbreeding with human and the part humans. I would think a true nerd would appreciate that side of the story without revealing too much.
There's something about them that it's not very plausible that you're going to win, which is a little bit different than we used to do things, in other times where we would fight stuff and but this is pretty huge, and as I say these are not the old ones, they're the Deep Ones.
Yeah, which is a different race, isn't it? Yeah. Within the within the Lovecraft universe, which is highly created, and I would agree with you, and hence why my comments about on my more nihilistic view of life, because it's that sense of, if there is something that's out there, well, it's not the pink, happy, fluffy granddad in the clouds that maybe we were raised to believe. There is that element of, well, it's worse.
Yeah, and there's something about it. You don't know what's going on with other people. You don't know. You don't know. I'm repeating my own lines from this thing, but you don't know who to trust, because there's weird stuff going on with everybody. It's really hard to talk about this without giving stuff away, but you don't know what's going on with everybody else. You can't tell. It's. I guess we all feel like that too. Without getting into too many things that are going on today, it's kind of hard to tell what's going on.
Well, exactly, and certainly, a big theme throughout any cosmic horror is this sense that there's something grander, and we're a tiny part of the picture. I don't think that's ruining any film by mentioning that. Robert, do you have anything to add on that point about your own view of the universe that's been created?
Well, to me,
in the Lovecraft,
one big cosmic horror show, Lovecraft, like Chad said, he was so far ahead of his time, and Dagon, he wrote about Dagon, and Dagon was worshipped in biblical times. So it just opened a whole different world to me, and I was just taken by his mythology and his detail, and I just was just captured by his writing and his stories. And as an actor, it gave me a chance to really explore sides of me that I had never explored before, in the role, and exploring this world that of Lovecraft. It was rich, and I learned a lot just by doing the role.
Well, certainly we're going to be expanding on your individual roles and sort of your everything that you put into it, and everything. Well, not everything about the character, but there's certainly a lot behind that that's I think will be interesting to discuss.
I just want to say one thing, Heather. The origin of who we are and where we come from. And I think that the attraction to Lovecraft is because he touches on that, with I talked about this before, with Nibiru, the planet Nibiru, and the Anunnaki. To me, it's in the film. We managed to put that in, but to me that's the mystery of and the lore of Lovecraft. Who are we? Where do we come from? Are we aliens? I really believe that there's this sea monster in all of us. There's this dark and light side of life, and we're just having a little glimpse of what's going on in this world. I mean, what's happening? The whole world is turned upside down, and when you read Lovecraft, it is upside down. I mean, so.
Oh, there's a god of chaos, isn't there? That just like floats around, big noodly kind of. I think that there is such a vast array of deities, shall we say, within the Lovecraftian world that you could attach a story or attach to any one of them with what's going on. So it is I'm, as you can tell, I'm a big fangirl of Lovecraft and all of that darker side, but you're right, it really does, even in sort of the simple sort of the detective novels, that this sense of this darkness that's beyond human comprehension, I think just lends itself so well to horror, because it's like however far you go, we are just showing a glimpse of what's capable, and the whole point of cosmic horror is we still don't get it, even if we see a glimpse, which I think is really, Chad's nodding away there. Do you want to add anything?
Well, also, everyone sees it or reads it in a different way. Someone might see the old ones as something else, and I see it as this, or the deep one. It's all an interpretation, which is a great thing. And it's the same thing with not necessarily showing the horror behind the door, but hearing it and letting your mind build what that monster might look like. And everyone's interpretation might be different in their mind. And I think that's what's so exciting and keeps something alive, instead of, here's the rubber suit or the CGI monster for that thing. And it kind of spoils it. But if there's certain elements that definitely give your mind the chance to start building a world or a monster or something, it makes it even more exciting, especially for repeat viewing, or, keeping it in your memory, that it's like, I thought I saw this giant thing behind the thing, but you never did, because it was all built up in your mind, and letting the filmmaker give you an opportunity to create something what you might think it would be. And it's this great way to interpret things that, especially on a limited budget, when you don't have the money for that creature, it's like, okay, let's just do it this way, and use sound, and use this, and let the audience make up its own creature behind that door or whatever.
I was going to move on to the special effects actually, because it's clear what you do show, and I know you use a lot of colour, which is again a great nod to Lovecraft, who left a lot to the reader's imagination, which can be frustrating from a script point of view, but also, as you said, it's brilliant from filmmaking, because just especially in the horror community, we like using our imagination. It helps engage, but we do see glimpses still. What I noticed, and which seems to be in keeping with the retro themes, which I'll also come into, is that you use practical effects rather than CGI. And for me, that actually is a real nod towards the retro themes of the film, but I wondered whether there was any deliberate decision, whether it was budgetary, or why didn't you go down the CGI route when that might have been a bit easier?
I just hate CGI. It doesn't. If you can do it practically, then do it. I mean, the same thing with like bullet hits and squibs. I mean, nothing beats, a peck and paw, wild bunch, blood blowing out, and especially for the actors and on set, and it really gives it a vibe that is not there with someone with a green, CG suit on that you have to do in later. To me, practical is the only way to go, and something I always want to adhere to. And but I do think CG is good to enhance certain elements and kind of wipe out the strings, so to speak. And but again, if the CG is, if you've got the money for a great CG thing and it can work, then all my hats off to you. But on this budget and my love of practical effects, there was no other choice but to embrace the man in a suit.
Of course. So and Kelly, there's a great scene with you where we see a bit of a glimpse there. Do you agree that actually, or not, as an actress, that it makes it, what's the difference between, for you as an actor, working with CGI or working with the practical man in or a woman in a suit?
It's kind of, if you know it's going to be CGI, then it's up to you to create that in your mind. And they might do something like throw a tentacle at you so you can really react to it. But knowing that it was going to be a real monster, I'm a big fan of practical effects as opposed to CGI. Although CGI is brilliant and it has its place, just like Chad was saying. But before we did this, I was at a screening for something that I did before, and I mentioned that I was going to do this, and I got this huge reaction because H.P. Lovecraft, right? And I wasn't expecting it. I said, but we're going to do practical effects, it's not going to be CGI, and they practically cheered. I think we all kind of feel like we just want to see practical stuff, It's where the filmmaker's creativity really comes, it's where the artistry comes in. Not that CGI is not artistic, because it definitely is, but this is kind of, it's kind of different when it comes to monsters and things like that, because it's a challenge. But as far as acting it, I didn't see a lot of the practical anyway. I saw that, so I didn't. It was kind of up to me to figure out what was horrible out there. I did have the tentacles. I mean, they did that to me. That was they really fought with me.
They ripped your good.
In my scene, yeah.
It was a great scene without revealing too much, but to be fair, from an audience perspective, I think again there's still a lot in that's left to our imagination, but we see your reaction. And Robert, would you like to comment? I mean, I know when it comes to the practical side in this film that you might not have seen as much, but do you have an opinion on horror and practical versus CGI? What do you prefer as an actor?
I think if anything is done well, I can appreciate it, whether it be practical or if it creates if you can believe it, and it takes you away, and you're swept away by it, whether it be CGI or practical. I think they both have their advantages. When I grew up, one of the first horror films I saw was The Thing.
Yeah, I love The Thing.
And to me, that was one of the most amazing sci-fi movies I've ever seen. It was done in the 50s. I mean, when he popped through the door with his arm, I mean, it was just It was one of the most frightening things I ever saw. And to me, less is more. So always. And, so it just depends on how it's done. And if something is done well, I'll buy it.
Yeah. And the thing, or certainly the original short story that inspired that, I think has some Lovecraftian elements, and certainly the monsters that have shown out, especially in the 1982 thing, which was my generation's kind of version of the thing from out, or it was the thing from outer space, the 50s film, the 52 film.
Yeah.
And then
that's a great example of a movie. You see the original one, it's great. The remake is great in a whole different way. And then for me, it made me go read the short story or the novella. And it's like, wow. It opens, they're all great. And I think that's the great thing about Lovecraft in this, is it might inspire people to go start reread Lovecraft or find it for the first time, and really it opens your whole perception of not only horror or cosmic horror, but of literature, and finding something that's inspiring. I mean, when you mentioned the thing, I saw the original 1982 version first. Then I went back and saw the original black and white version, and was blown away. And then I read the novel and was blown away. So that's an amazing thing that can only be inspiring to really anyone in cinema. It's too.
And the jumbled mess of the thing, it appeared in The Colour Out of Space as well, with the llama. So yeah, it's great. And you're right, there's so many aspects to the Lovecraftian universe that you could take any element and still not infringe on those great works. But I've not seen anyone play with the deep ones just yet, so this was very, very curious. Your own film was very curious. Now, one thing is going into the theme. So very much the town that they're in, that this film is set in, there's very much it's very 60s, the aesthetic, the phone, the people, there's that wicker man element in the community. And originally when I started watching, I thought this is set in the 60s, but then there's the nod to social media and our current world. So effectively that becomes a time capsule. So I wanted you to explain why that period of time, and why is it a time capsule as opposed to just being set in the 60s?
Well, it goes back to, like you said, The Wicker Man was another great inspiration for this. It was Rosemary's Baby, The Wicker Man. All those things kind of came together with, mating with Lovecraft. So to me, it was the location, which Gina, the actress who plays Alex, that was the house she was renting. Basically, she sent me pictures. Hey, here's a location we can.
Brilliant. So she was really in it.
I started the script based on that location, her and Robert and Sylvia and Kelly as characters that I wanted in it. So they just kind of melded from that. And the whole 60s thing, I mean, I have a collection of rotary phones, I have record players, I have a Betamax. I'm stuck in, a time period that's not this time period, or even the one that I grew up in. I love film noir, I love, all those things. So to me, it's kind of taking things I love. I love seeing a rotary phone, or I love seeing a record player, and melding those in, and not necessarily being stuck to the confines of a certain time frame. But the idea that, this could be a 1960s film or a 1950s or whatever it is, and then a cell phone pops up and you're like, hey, wait a second. But we're not in those confines of saying, hey, I called them out, I caught a mistake, where it's kind of gives you more free reign to paint the picture with things you love, whether it be, a plaid drapes or something that's not necessarily hip at the time, but in a sense timeless, because it has an element that doesn't date it. The same thing. I don't like to get politics in a film, because that, I think, dates it. If you're, you're shitting on Richard Nixon in your film, and now it's not, 30 years later, and it's like, who? People. It's better to just kind of keep politics out of something, or if you do have a political statement, keep it under the underline, so it's only picked up by people who are really perceptive and want to pick that up. Like there are elements in this that, if you were in the mind of politics, you would pick up that, the cult is Republican, or, you know, the people are liberal that are coming into this and trying to be wooed into a conservative side, whether it be because of the American flags flowing on the beach or whatever. You could pick up that element. Was it intended? No, but it could be picked up upon, and that to me gives it again multiple levels of viewing to an audience that might not necessarily find those things. But if you're looking for them, you could find whatever you want to find in.
Well, certainly, because there was mention of a TV show that was definitely in the 60s, but then, for example, sort of the acceptance, you know, the dynamics of the women in the film, or certainly of Alex, who's very modern woman. There's the discussion between her and her counterpart, Ingrid, who, right, you know, where they're talking about the wine, and I was just like, no, that's a new thing, you know, as to the, you know, do you drink wine? There's also the acceptance of the doctor, who right, is, I know, played by Timothy, but is presenting as a woman. And you know, and it's kind of that acceptance that you wouldn't have had in that time. So there's all, I did pick up on those nods, which is kind of what actually made it really unsettling, because yeah, and the community element, even though we do have modern cults, seem to be very much, you know, something that came up at that time as well. So it was really interesting, and I felt added an unsettling element. But it's interesting that you are a complete fan of that period. So Robert, Kelly, do you have anything to add about the, you know, the film's aesthetics, which the attention to detail, even the cinematography, I think it looked like a film from that period, and I think it really works.
Well, that's something to strike upon, because the whole thing for me is we've got the same lenses that shot The Shining, which were Zeiss super speed lenses from probably the 80s, late 70s time period. And then we mostly use an 18 millimeter and a 25 millimeter lens, same as on Rosemary's Baby, kind of give it a consistence in the imagery.
Yeah.
So it's not, you know, a zoom here and that, you know, it keeps solid to this thing of trying to capture that. And that was one of the things the DP, Jeff Billings, and I kind of studied upon, not only Rosemary's Baby, but The Shining, and even E.T. for the scene in the kitchen with the tentacles. There was certain grabs of shots and stuff. Okay, let's get that and use that, and kind of really just getting that attention to other films that made an impact on us, and kind of following that. And there's nothing better than older lenses that really lend a certain look to it, and then you give it a little film look in post, and you can't beat it, because there's nothing worse than seeing, you know, a film that, I hate to say retro, but it falls under that retro vibe, but it looks as clean and as sharp as anything else, and it kind of spoils the whole illusion of cinema. And I mean, because if we had the budget, I would have loved to shoot on 35 millimeter film, and really, you know, that's the one thing. If people said, here, you've got all the money in the world, here's your budget, what do you want to do? I want to shoot on film, and I want to cut on film. I want to steam back editing. I'd want to actually be feeling it again. Is that nothing more amazing as a filmmaker, especially my first film in the 90s, late 90s, we shot on film, and we didn't cut it on film, but I wanted to. And it was just one of those things where you'd like to come full circle with the beginning of cinema and the end of cinema, and, you know, into this digital age. So I would love to go back and do that kind of film.
Well, maybe you'll have the opportunity to do a little bit of retro for the next one. Certainly, but, you know, to comment on the before Kelly and Robert, I'll give you an opportunity to add further there on the color scheme. At the moment, I'm seeing in indie horror the whole red, blue, green is really garish, and actually, you know, the daylight, the fact that this was mainly a daylight horror, I'm a big fan of. The tones were very much, you know, like with the oranges and the greens, again added to that vibe that we saw in the 60s, which I fangirl over that, really, because I've watched so many films now. And of course, doing my own, I really noticed the color scheme. So the fact that it was a little bit different, and of course, orange means caution. So, you know, I saw those at the right moments. But it was really, really beautiful, because I think by using that particular, you know, going for the approach of, you know, let's take it from movie as if it's in the 60s, really worked. So it looked intentional, as opposed to, you know, I see a lot of retro theme horror, as you said, there's elements that are wrong, so it looks cheap. as
Right.
opposed to intentional. And this had all the hallmarks of a 60s film, which I know the people that like Lovecraft and that would like the style of film would love that. I'm hoping this is not a review and Grimmfest aren't going to say, no, wait, but if they do. But yeah, Kelly, Robert, what do you have to add to that?
I wasn't really aware of what the whole thing was going to look like when it was put together, but I love that because it does tip you off that there's going to be a lot of cool, juicy, yummy callbacks to 60s movies and to the traditional stuff that that we're all fans of, which I didn't see that he was going to do that until I saw the movie, which was great. And also too, it does the fact that we don't comment on somebody being transgender or anything, it's kind of more scary because it's kind of saying we can be as woke as we want in 2020, but we're still we're still in the same amount of danger that we were in the 50s. It doesn't help us, whether we have cell phones or we're empowered women or we don't. I love that we didn't comment on it was like a throwback to we weren't commenting on the doctor or anything like that, and yet we were still, as people, we're still in the same amount of danger that we were when we weren't woke. It's kind of scarier. Because we're supposed to be, more enlightened than that now. We shouldn't have the same problems, and guess what we do? So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
To me, it was, I didn't even know I was in the 60s. I mean, to me, it was timeless. I mean, and that's what made the movie makes the movie so special. This movie it's timeless. It's, and a good piece of art is timeless. So I felt I was in the present time, just experiencing the just going through the story, just telling this story of this cult, and
I think the cat wants introducing.
It's all about tribalism, and people's beliefs. So I don't know. It seems like the more things change, the more they stay the same. So anyway, it was something that was timeless for me.
And I think actually because of that element, this film will age very well. Whereas anything shot on a new camera, you can have your Black Knight, your Red Dragon, whatever, but in 2 years' time it's going to be something else. So everything ages. So actually having that deliberate kind of otherworldly element, as you said, the Wickers Man, Rosemary's Baby, I think works really, really well. So going on to the individual characters. So Robert, let's start with your character. And what I would ask is, I am aware in preparing for part, you really have to have a lot of empathy with your character. So I'm just going to ask, effectively, what experiences did you draw on to really empathize with Russell?
So I empathize. I draw on my own experience. So at the center of every character I play, it's I'm there. It's me. So it's me in these given circumstances, and so I'm able to identify with the character. I'm able to, the more I believe the circumstances, and I just ask the question, how would it be for me given these circumstances? And from there, I'm able to be truthful and honest and real. So it becomes very real for me in the moment. So I'm discovering it as I do it. So there's no preconceived idea of how I'm going to do this, because what happens is I work from the unknown, from the creative process. So I don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And then, so I'm surprised myself. And as a result of my being surprised, then the audience is surprised. So it has that feeling of spontaneity and aliveness. And I mean, working with Kelly and sitting in that car with her, my God, I mean, that was amazing, just having that experience with her. I didn't know what she was going to do. And it just,
he was going to do.
I just became so enthralled, immersed in what was happening. So, being swept away by it, that's that's what we hope to happen.
Well, certainly Russell is a very enigmatic character. He reminded me very much of, and the way you portrayed him reminded me very much of Christopher Lee in the Wicca. That same, he's absolutely adored by the community, but has that, the darkness, that, that there's a lot of mystery behind him. Were there any other influence? Well, you said, you're drawing on your own experiences in developing and portraying this character, but certainly, did you draw any film influences into?
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, did you draw on any characters or actors or the way that they were portrayed to bring that both?
Well, no, I don't mimic any other actors. I don't. That's not how I approach the role. Like I said, it's for me as an actor, I claim it all. As a human, as part of this human experience, I claim it all. So in that way, so I'm able to believe that this is part of me. I'm just expressing myself through the material. So Russell is very much a part of me. I feel connected to the, as you put it so well, this cosmic universe that we're experiencing. So we're part of this whole cosmic. So we're part of it all. So I'm able to identify with that. And I believe it. So as I believe it, then I'm able to, just say the words truthfully.
Yeah, and as I said, it very, very compelling. I love the fact that all of the characters have a real three-dimensionality to them, and it's not just a pure antagonist, protagonist. There's those human elements to both of them. Chad, as the writer, was there any particular characters in mind when you were writing Russell, or not?
Christopher Lee, definitely. Angus Scrimm from Phantasm. There's a little bit of Neville Brand in the Ninth Configuration. I mean, there's certain things that interweave whether it's conscious or subconscious, that you pick up on, that it's like, oh yeah, it is Christopher Lee, now that you mention it. But I necessarily didn't sit down and say, oh, this is going to be Christopher Lee. But when you mention that, it sparks, and it's like, oh, of course, because The Wicker Man being a huge inspiration even before writing it. But I never, thought to just write it as that. It just kind of came naturally to whatever it is. And when you see it cut together, it's like, oh yeah, Phantasm, or Christopher Lee, or whoever. But and a lot of my things go that way, where I never storyboard, I never shot list, I don't do any of that. I just kind of just wing it when we get there. And normally people, like the DP, this is the first time I worked with Jeff as a DP, he kind of raised his eye and was like, what? And I'm like, just talk to my last DP, Christian. We did, 3 films together. He knows what it's about. And it's about when you get there, because especially if you've never filmed at that location or whatever, you don't know what you have to come up with on the fly or how it's going to be a work. But as an editor, I'm able to know exactly what I need to make a scene cut together. So when I get there, I let the actors run a rehearsal, and you see how it flows out and what you need to grab it and make it work. Or if there's a certain scene in a certain shot in the script, I'll go for that, of whatever, the camera booms down or whatever it might be, and do a close-up on Robert, whatever it would be, and you stick to that. But 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work the way you imagined it, especially on a low budget. So you've got to be ready to run and gun it and make it work under your time constraints or the performance or whatever it might be. And I've learned to embrace that style of filmmaking, where most people go, what, are you crazy? And
Yeah, you
I've-
saw the anxiety flash across my face when it was like, no storyboards.
and so it basically kind of I've embraced that style of filmmaking, and it goes the same with improv and whatever, for an actor to give their own interpretation, or even in the editing room, I'll let the composer or actors take a look at the rough cut, see what they think, give ideas, and build something in that. Because as a writer, director, editor, you get so immersed in it, you don't know if you're going in the right direction sometimes. And so I think it's important to collaborate with as many people as possible, especially if they're excited about doing it and giving good ideas. Then you take those ideas, because now it's going to be your idea that people are like, oh, wow, what a great director. Look what he did with that. Well, that was Kelly's idea, or that was Sylvia's idea. But, I'll get the credit for it, for certain things of, in the editing or whatever it is, or a performance. And I think that's the best part about being a director is, especially a collaborative director, you're able to cull from everyone else's imagination and ideas and make something that might not on the page have worked out without those extra bits of collaboration.
And of course,
So as an actor working with Chad, that's one of the special perks that you have, because he creates a space for you, this safe space for you to explore, what you have to explore. So you and so he just leaves you alone to find it, and that's such a wonderful gift to give an actor. So he's, there's no result. You're not working from the result. You're working from, anything can happen, and that's when you find the light. That's when you find the truth.
And certainly the discussion over the influences for the script, doesn't take away, how much you made Russell your own as this very, very compelling leader. But for me, your own character harks back to, again, all those films that I enjoyed, even if it wasn't intentional, and having that, obviously clearly bringing in your considerable experience, Robert, on a collaborative basis is what makes the end result so special. Kelly, I want to talk about your own character, who, she's overlooked at first. We see a short but very compelling story, a character arc for her. But at the end, there was that wonderful conflict in that the scene in the car with Robert, where there's that clear conflict between the love for her daughter and the love for the gods. And again, I'll pose the same questions to you, is about how, what aspects and what experiences did you draw on to empathize with your character, and what is your view on her own internal conflict that was clearly playing out there?
I'm first of all blown away that you said that you verbalized that. I don't think I even verbalized that to myself. That was beautiful.
Heather, you're really good.
I'm very.
Thank you.
Right
I'll
now.
take the ego strokes.
That was awesome. For me, I had to. To get to where she is, where my character is in the story. I have a teacher that always said, it should cost you something. It should cost, and anytime it costs you something, but you wouldn't have it any other way. I just kind of lived with her, and I just gave myself permission to get where I needed to be with that. And it's not a place you necessarily want to go, but you have to and you want to. I don't know if I'm making any sense with that, but it's more just finding it in yourself. I feel like I'm kind of echoing Robert, but it's finding it in yourself, and just letting it be there, and not trying to push it away, and things come up that you don't even realize are happening, which is interesting. When we shot that, and Chad is, somebody asked me one time, what's Chad like? The first thing that I said, spontaneous. He's very unassuming. He lets everybody do their thing and everything. And if something, all of a sudden he comes up with something, and you just, after you realize that's the case, you just trust him, but he'll just come up with anything. And it rather than that being scary, it's very comforting, because there's something very safe about it. When we shot that scene, I think we did it like once or twice, and that was it. We shot it like I put so much preparation into it, and then we shot it, and like it felt like 2 takes.
It was 2 takes, yeah.
That's really good.
It was, right? I didn't want to exaggerate. It was very short, and I thought, wow, what's that going to be like? Because I kind of expected, given the material, that I wouldn't have been surprised if we took hours on that, and we didn't. We took like 2 takes. I was thinking, oh, I hope that worked. But everybody pulls together and makes it, puts their own idea into it. And when I saw it cut together, I saw things that I didn't realize were in there, actually.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for all of the community, and certainly at in Alex's character, and to an extent Ingrid, we very much see that the modern woman, and then being drawn into this community where there's this sense of belonging, and to these to the deep ones, but to something greater, shall we say. So I'm conscious of time now, so I'll come back, and I think if we were to talk about the characters more, we would probably run it. So definitely, hopefully, people will be intrigued by your answer in that scene, and book on the premiere. But when it comes to, I mean, certainly, Chad, you've said, the success of this film and how it's all come together. You've commented that you felt that, it's been blessed in some way. And I don't know if it's jovial, or whether, was there any creepy goings on that would suggest that there was something greater looking after you?
No, I think there's definitely something greater looking after it. I mean, there were 2 occasions I fell asleep at the wheel driving and could have easily died. Because I chose to commute to the set there and back each night instead of staying there, because I like a disconnect between myself and the actors, because I don't think there should be a personal involvement with a director, especially on this film. And I took that opportunity to basically clear my head. It could be an hour and a half drive home each night, an hour and a half drive or more there, depending on traffic, each day for the shoot. And when you've got to do, 10 to 14 pages a day, that can be very tiring. So it would be basically, I'm halfway through the shoot, I drove home, everything was fine, we had a great day, and then I wake up and I'm almost hitting, oncoming traffic. So it was a couple of times that happened. I'm like, that could have ended badly, but luckily it didn't. And you've got to hope or think that maybe something, or just intuition in your subconscious or the cosmic mind of whatever's going on, wake up at this time, save your life, finish the film, move on to the next. Who knows? But I'm thankful that there were no injuries, there was no insurance, all these things that fell into place perfectly, that not necessarily other filmmakers have that same kind of luck. You can either say, hey, it's luck, or the experience of making 8 films, or whatever it be, under the same kind of knowledge. Or, H.P. Lovecraft himself is looking down or looking up and making, good things happen. Who knows? Because it was appreciating his work and not trying to step on it. So hopefully, if there is an afterlife, that he was.
To me, it was like a labor of love, and I think that's really what carried us through, that we all loved. I couldn't wait to get onto the set, to play again with Chad and all the other, and Kelly and all the other actors and people. So, and I think that's what kept us going. That's what kept us together. It was a team, and it was a labor of love. It really was. So I think that really helped us get through it.
So Kelly, anything to add?
I remember saying to Chad, I said, this really feels like it's, because I'm sort of that way, so I always hesitate so people don't think I'm a weirdo, but I said, this really seems sort of blessed. It seems sort of something about it. We seem blessed, and I didn't know how Chad was going to take that, and he went, It's like we all felt it. I just said it, out loud, but we were all feeling it, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
feel that way.
there's quite a few of us creatives, I think, that have those leanings towards something greater than ourselves, even if it's just a consciousness, which again feeds into why I think cosmic horror is becoming so popular. Robert, you have a guest there as well. Hello.
Hi, I'm Sylvia. I'm playing Ingrid in the movie. Sorry.
Yeah, I thought so. You obviously, with your hair up and everything, are not obviously carrying a being. Certainly, I'm glad you could join us. I was going to ask about Ingrid's character. I'm very conscious that we're timing out, but would you like to say anything about your own character, the inspiration for Ingrid? Because we start with her and she becomes very integrated into the community. So
that's a body double.
No,
you look greater. That's all I'll say. You look really well.
In regards to the character, maybe that's what he already said too. I mean, you always try to find it within yourself. Yeah. And you just try to find that part and explore that part, and then given the circumstances, and make it as real as possible. I mean, that opening scene, imagine you are in these circumstances and you're running away and you have nothing on you. I mean, that's pretty much just being there was pretty easy, getting into that character and going, oh my God, what was I doing? I left my country, which in real life I actually did. I did leave my country. And there I am in the middle of nowhere running and nobody knows where I'm at. So that was really cool of Chad to actually base the character on somebody that's from a different country.
Yeah. But when we meet her, well, obviously afterwards when we meet her, she's very integrated and seems happy. Is it brainwashing, or she genuinely found that sense of community? Because she very much walks back. She doesn't try and get away at that key scene in the opening. She seems to, at that point, embrace the community. Or have I got that wrong?
My perception of it was that, yeah, there is a certain amount of brainwashing going on. And we were just talking about the other day of people that are very sensitive, are very easily manipulated. And so I just kind of took that kind of aspect into her character, and being like those two people in a way, wanting to break out of it, but at the same time there is this brainwash going on.
And it's something I'll happily talk about, but I'm very conscious that you've got other interviews, so I definitely, that is something I really hope comes up in your other interviews, because you don't quite know, because it's the way the characters are portrayed. They seem happy, they seem to be part of this, but as you said, there is a vulnerability there that would lend someone, even with modern cults, which is a fascination of mine, to convince themselves that they're part of this, which again, it's very unsettling in the movie. And I'll end with this for all of you. Now you've had this experience with this incredible film. Any more Lovecraft stories coming for? Would you do more Lovecraftian?
Oh, absolutely! I would love to do another one.
There's a sequel to this cooking in my head at the moment, so hopefully this will do well enough to spur a sequel, because the idea would delve even deeper into the whole mythology, and it would be great. So hopefully this will do well, because Lovecraft is just amazing. Like when you take the car scene and they're reading direct quotes of Lovecraft, it's just, you sit there behind the camera just jaw agape, because it's like his words are so amazing when it's coming from great actors, and it's spellbinding. So hopefully,
and there's the book in the beach house as well, isn't it, that Alex reads from. So yeah, no, very, very faithful. I think to the Lovecraft universe. Sylvia, I'm so sorry that we didn't get to chat. I know I could see you were working in the background, but it's good to see you again. I loved Ingrid's play against Alex and Hatchley. We were seeing them on different timelines, but they're so similar. They're mirrors of each other, and there's some wonderful interactions, between Ingrid, who's pregnant, and Alex at the start of the film, and I'll just comment that the way women are portrayed in this film actually is where the modern values come in, because yes, there's nudity, but it's not the propping up the story. It's genuinely part of it. I love the fact that sort of Ingrid as a pregnant woman is revered. You can see revered as a goddess in a subtle way, and yeah, fantastic. So thumbs up from this feminist filmmaker here. Before I let you go to your next session, is there anything you would like to add or say to anyone that will be watching this?
I just want to thank you for really an amazing interview. You are really top notch.
Yeah, you honestly almost made me
very impressive.
I didn't want to make any, but as I said at the start, you know, I've been a horror fan for years. You know, my own journey, which is slightly spiritual, you know, maybe we'll get to meet at a festival and talk about it, has led me through writing, discovering that horror element, and, you know, in a way getting to meet people like you. It's like a film school for me. So but as a writer, I think, you know, I'm used to going into those depths, and I see things everywhere. So I've had some wonderful people. Definitely, it's been a joy to speak to you all. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think this has been wonderful. So I'd love, you know, we were talking at the beginning about, you know, I was very much, should I just use this as notes? But I think this is something that the audience needs to see, so they can go into this film and really look for all of those Easter eggs and those hidden depths.